I'm getting together with Kevin Ressler today. Kevin is married to my niece, Melissa. He's also the president and CEO of United Way of Lancaster County. We are talking about how we're doing during these uncertain times that the coronavirus has put us in. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right myself. I am one of those people who loves change and chaos a little bit. So I kind of feel like in my element in a weird way from a professional standpoint for sure. And being in the sort of helping field, it's great to be able to utilize my skills and resources. I just told my staff yesterday, I said, we just launched this fund in collaboration with the Lancaster County Community Foundation. They put up $250,000, but they wanted us to actually do the deployment of funds, the analysis of where those emerging needs are. And I told my staff, I said, the reason that that's happening is because for the last 5 years, you've already been doing this collective impact model. You've been putting in the work. And now is the moment that you get to actually do that from a full implementation standpoint. And so a lot of the work that happens in nonprofits is preparing for moments that we hope never come and developing responses for moments that are frequently there. And right now, the thing about this urgent time is all of that planning and preparation is going to be overwhelmed by more than we had ever expected. And so that's the challenge. On the personal level, I, like everybody else, am dealing with the whole, there are more people at home all of the time than you're used to. I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. They don't have daycare right now because the daycare shut down. They don't have school because the school shut down. My wife is also director of a program. She works with seniors in her capacity as executive director of the Lancaster Downtowners. And so that means that she needs to go physically into the location of their housing. So half the day, at least, I'm with the girls by myself trying to video conference and do all the work. That's a little bit stressful. But it's fun to be. I always wanted to be a stay-at-home dad. Like my whole life, I wanted to marry a doctor so I could just be stay-at-home dad. So I'm still working while doing it, but it's been enjoyable. I will say, and I think this is something to be mindful of for all of us, is the emotional stuff, and not even just our own. So my daughter, who's 5, the first thing I noticed was before school was even let out, we had been planning on me chaperoning a field trip to the Philadelphia Zoo. And before they canceled school, they canceled travel outside the county. And my daughter comes home, and I happen to be on the front porch when Melissa and Acacia walk up. And Acacia looks at me very sad. And she says, Dad, I have really sad news to tell you. And I said, What's that, honey? And she says, Well, I know how much you were looking forward to going to the field trip. They had to cancel it because of coronavirus. I'm sorry to tell you, I know you're going to be sad. And I'm like, 5-year-old should be sad that she's not going on the field trip, not that daddy doesn't
That is little
chaperone.
girl. Okay.
Right. So that was a person who was like, oh, like that point, it was like, oh, it's cute. She's empathetic. And then she starts making comments every day. There's at least one comment. So we had to send my aunt back to Tanzania early. She's got a green card, so she comes every 6 months. And Acacia hadn't seen her much, and so she was a little sad that we had to send my aunt Phoebe back. And Acacia says, "I hope that she survives the plane trip." And that was odd to me because just not something. Death isn't something she usually thinks about too much. She hated Moana because her grandmother dies early,
Yeah.
But in general, she doesn't talk about that. I thought maybe she's just picked up an apprehension of on air flight or something. But then the other day she's praying and she says, please don't let any of our family and friends die from the coronavirus.
Oh,
And
that's
I'm
right.
like, whoa, like that's heavy. And so I'm working right now with this new website that we're putting together with the school counselors about putting up content on how can we help parents learn how to navigate a conversation that no one in history has ever had to have before.
Mhm.
So from the professional to the personal, there's completely different stuff and a big wide swing. But yeah, it's all heavy, and I keep ending meetings saying, "Thank you for the work you're doing. You're carrying heavy burdens. Be mindful. Get outside. Dance to loud music. Like meditate. Whatever it is that you and your personality need to cut loose in self care. Take
Yeah.
5 minutes and do it."
That's a good point that we all have different ways of coping and grieving, which is also part of this. We're grieving aspects of our life that are maybe gone forever, And we
Mhm.
may, even before this is over, be grieving the loss of someone we know,
Right.
sadly. But yeah, it sounds like from a professional point of view, in some ways you were ready for this moment. And maybe what your team's doing as far as the real work is really not going to change, but actually going to blossom and develop. But working with those little girls, Kevin, in your background, I can imagine that that really only brings you joy because I've seen you with your little girls. They adore you and you are a doting father. So enjoy that part of it and take care of Melissa. Oh my goodness, putting herself at risk every day. You know, I'm sure she practices all the safe distancing and things like that because
Right.
she's very
Right.
practical. But did she have what she needs?
As far as I know, I mean, she's tied into the Landis communities,
Yeah,
and so they're on constant calls about this stuff. But I mean, my former employment is Meals on Wheels. There's an agency that can't stop. Like
yeah,
at the United Way, we're all work from home now.
right.
We
Well,
can
what do
do
you
things.
hear about Meals on Wheels and the meal delivery?
So I'm still very integrally involved there. I've been working with the director who replaced me, who I sort of handpicked and had been with me for 3 years because of her excellence in running the operations in a normal time. But this isn't a normal time. And I just left like 3 months ago. So I have a call later today with her. I talk to her almost every day and just trying to think through. So, we've gone through phases of like, all right, let's get some of our older volunteers to take a break to, oh, we need to make sure that we're not like entering houses. So now, but there's costs, right? And so she's like hesitant about costs because it was sort of like, just stay in last year's budget and you'll be fine. And then all of a sudden it's like, we need to spend $3,000 on new cooler bags. That's not in last year's budget. Can I do that? So there's a lot of pressures on nonprofit leaders who are having to make decisions outside of the boundaries and guidelines that they normally have set up to ensure sustainability and success. And for Meals on Wheels, that's been buying some hand washing stations and equipment and cooler bags and a massive amount of wipes. Putting out Ziploc bags with wipes
Mm,
to every volunteer and Ziploc bags with gloves so that if they need to open a door to take it into a refrigerator, they can wipe down every surface, their door,
mhm.
to their car, their steering wheel, their gear shift, just thinking through as much as we can. How do you adjust for a time? What are your resources? And always, every decision you make, you have no idea if it's going to actually work. you
Right,
know,
right, because this is
like
new to all of us, right?
it's a total guessing game. And so the stress level of the nonprofit executives right now, particularly the ones who are like still doing direct service, especially in food and shelter, like within homelessness, like where you've got to like homelessness, prisons, high risk populations, high risk situations. Like the homeless shelters are not designed for this. Like they are
No.
designed to have literally all of the things you don't want right now. Mass amounts of people in close quarters and proximity to one another, cleaning schedule as best as you can, but certainly not the kind of deep cleaning that we're now looking to be accustomed to. It's really rough, and those leaders are stressed. If you know any of them, send them an email. I mean, I've just been sending little short emails. I know you don't have time. I just want to say you're rocking out, you're kicking butt, and I just want to say thank you. And it's amazing how many times the response has been back. This is the first smile I've had all day. Thank you. So we got to
Good for you,
shower.
Kevin. Good
We
for
really
you.
got to.
We need to remember those among us who are on the front lines.
Oftentimes nonprofits are not looked at. Frankly, we don't respect nonprofits nearly enough as I think we should as businesses. I mean, we're employers. I think 16% of all employees in the state of Pennsylvania work for nonprofits. And I've always said nobody gives nonprofits the credits for being job creators. But when I worked at Meals on Wheels and expanded the amount of people who we were able to serve who needed those services, went from 6 employees, four part-time and 2 full-time, to 10 employees, 2 part-time and 8 full-time. That's job creation. Why don't nonprofits get the same respect as small businesses for helping to drive the economy, sustain the economy, and also ensure that those who are not winners in the economy don't fall into a sort of really bad, chaotic situation? I've been surprised that the economy has been booming for the last, 8, 10 years, and yet nonprofit contributions haven't been skyrocketing, right? In many cases, individual giving's been decreasing.
Mhm.
Well, tomorrow, when someone for the first time in their life has to sign up and rely on someone who can provide them food. Well, in a year or two, when they're back on their feet, not all of them, but a lot of those individuals are going to say, okay, who do we write a check to? Who's helping someone today who's in a situation that I, for the first time in my life, was in last year? And that's going to be a good thing.
Yes, yes. If there is going to be a silver lining, it's going to be that new appreciation for the services around us and the people who work amongst us for
And our
a good.
neighbors. I hope this breaks. I hope this breaks some of the partisan stuff that we have
It
in
seems to be
society.
starting. There's nothing like a crisis to bring out what's really inside of us.
Well,
And
and to
over the
give
last few years, without getting too political, I've been horrified about what's been inside of us that's been
right,
spilling
right,
out. But I'm starting to be more hopeful. So
right.
that's a good
And
thing.
most, so sort of joking about it a little bit, but this sort of toilet paper crisis, right? Like everybody buying and hoarding toilet paper. And I wrote a post on social media about like, what do we become as a society that you run to the grocery store and buy a 36 pack of toilet paper before you ask your neighbor if they have a roll that they can spare, right? And sort of thinking in those terms, most of our toilet paper is stark white or recycled brown, right?
Yep.
I have not to this point seen blue and red toilet paper. So I am hopeful that when we get down to it, we realize that toilet paper doesn't have a political party. A cup of sugar doesn't have a political party. When we get to that point where you're like, man, I'd rather not go to the grocery store and risk my health when I know that my next door neighbor has this thing in abundance. And
So,
previously, I didn't like my next door neighbor because they voted for someone else. But
you know what, Kevin? That also brings me to this observation that we've become so independent, and I'm
mm-hmm.
speaking for myself too, that we don't ask for help anymore.
No,
You
because
know,
you can press the buy now button on Amazon. So why would you ask for
right?
help?
So in some ways, it might be good for us to learn how to
Oh
ask
yeah.
each other for help and to look to each other for that support that we have in our neighbors next door or online, but social distancing, right?
right, right.
Put that
Toss,
toilet paper on the doorstep and run.
toss, toss the toilet paper. Make sure it's still attached, so you're not TPing someone's house. But get it to them 6 feet away.
I saw something
Right.
on Facebook this morning that said that her house was TP'd last night, and now her house value's gone up to $875,000.
Well, yeah. The other thing I want to say a little bit about is I know you and I have had various experiences with church, and many people who have had experiences with religion, good and bad. One of this, as a pastor and someone who's worked in church frustratedly for many years, one of the things that most frustrates me about church in the modern day is how much the focus on support is internal to their own community
Mm-hmm.
and to themselves and each other. And I'm interested in seeing what happens now that the worship services have been effectively shut down for a period, and to see what people come out of that. And I hope people come out of that realizing that my church was shut down from a worship service, and so I needed to find a different way to engage in a continuous way with my faith that wasn't pre-set up for me. And hopefully that will change the way that we see people who act spiritually, but also within regards to like, how do you give of your time, your thoughts, your energy, your spirituality? How do you connect with your neighbors? I hope that this time period where we don't have the worship within the walls helps us reframe thinking after this time period about what does it mean to worship outside of the walls. And I don't just mean prayer and song. I mean showing the glory of the impulse of your goodness, whatever your religious tradition you come from, or if you're just a spiritual but not religious person, but to think about what is the communal community part of spirituality and togetherness, and how, to your podcast title, how do we do the togethering when we don't have our usual ways of plugging in but not engaging? And I'm really excited, honestly, to see some of the ways that post coronavirus sort of shutdown situation, how we come out rethinking about what it means to be a people.
Well, you know that I agree with you 100% on all of that. I'm thinking about the lunch we just had a few weeks ago
Mm-hmm.
in the Philadelphia train station when we talked about church and community.
Mm-hmm.
And I do hope that maybe this resets our idea about how we together
Yeah.
in church and express our goodness, like you said, to those around us. Maybe it can transcend those political and racial and economic barriers that we talked about. So
And yeah, right, that are inside of the church, right? Not the church against the world, but literally the church against itself in so many ways right
right,
now. And yeah, hopefully this allows us to break down those barriers and say, hey, you know what? There's a lot more important things that we can do together than
right,
decide whether we should be singing contemporary songs or hymns, or whether whether that person's allowed in this space or not. And whether they have to believe exactly the way I do or not, and get to the spirit of spirituality more than the legalism.
right, right. Like let's make it about the real thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, people in my neighborhood just died because of a crazy disease because some of our political rancor in the church impacts our politics, which means that we don't have effective leaders because we'd rather be right than do the right thing. And hopefully, coming out of this, we can say, I never want to be in a situation again where our partisanship, both inside of faith communities, outside, and everywhere, has meant that we haven't had the healthcare system, which we're learning right now, that when we've seen charts that say we're 38th in health and we respond and say America's number one, we might not actually have been number one, and we probably should have been doing what it took to
I have a
pull
feeling
together.
that our new stats that are zooming
Yeah,
up are going to reveal our true status there.
unfortunately, and the hope is that coming out of this, we say never again are we going to let our desire to be right keep us from doing the right thing.
Good point. Kevin, you and I are working on a project together.
Yes.
Yes, and that's an
Yeah.
exciting one. It came out of this coronavirus. I do want to talk a little bit about it without revealing it if you're not quite ready to.
So we're working on this really cool website together, and what I like about it is I there's a lot of places that are focusing again on their particular lane with regards to the services people need. And what I see is a need to have one sort of space that can help link out to those resources, but you can just go and find a way to be united together. And it fits with the United Way. So I've already got more and more people who are saying, can we contribute? We haven't even launched it yet. And just yesterday, I had two new people say, our organization wants to help. We've got information. How can we help? And I'm like, aha, we have a place that we're trying to design to be able to do that. The school counselors I mentioned earlier want to give resources for children. There's an agency that supports nonprofit management that wants to provide best practices as they're being developed. So there's a space for them to see that. We've got, two former newspaper reporters who want to be able to tell stories, human interest stories, and other stories, and then just put up some opportunities for people to get involved through volunteering or donating through this fund that we've set up in partnership with Lancaster County Community Foundation to support the needs of individuals. And I'm really excited about seeing that come to fruition.
But bringing it back around to reality and the coronavirus,
Mm-hmm.
Kevin and I started this project a week ago.
Oh, wait, yeah, a week ago.
Yeah, a week ago, and made really fast progress. And it slowed down for two reasons. Number one, we were pulling all these content contributors together. But the second reason is that I've been sick with pneumonia for about a month, and I had a relapse. I did test negative for COVID, thankfully. I got my results back yesterday. And the reason I'm thankful for that is that I didn't contaminate anybody when I traveled from Canada
Right.
back home. Wish I would have the antibodies, but my point is that Kevin was patient with me, and I think a lot of people are going to be working as teams online, collaborating with each other, and there are going to be setbacks. There's going to be sickness. There's going to be those children bouncing around in the background. There's going to be people just getting stressed out and maybe just needing to take a little bit of a break. And I think we need to be patient with each other during this time, even when we feel pushed by deadlines and commitments, because this time is surrealistic. And we we look at it and we don't understand it. So my admonition for everybody is to be as patient with your teams as Kevin has been with me.
Well, I mean, when I think about the amount of workload I have right now, if I'm not patient with anybody else, I don't deserve anybody to be patient with me. And there's so much to do. And, you know, if we just set something aside for a day or a week and we focus on the other things, it's okay. We're going to come out fine on that. And we need to be aware that there's, like you said, there's kids bouncing around in the background. That's part of my challenge, right? I want people to be patient with me when I have to pause and tell my daughter, I need you to go downstairs and watch more TV than I would ever want you to watch.
Yes.
So I have to be patient with my kids who are like putting on the TV every time dad gets on a video call because they know he's not going to do anything about it. And similarly, people are learning video conferencing tools and meetings are having to start late because someone didn't download it, and it's not going to help anybody to raise the level any more than it already is. So I 100% agree. Like, we're just, this is a time for patience, and it might be a really good opportunity for us to learn, not just sort of patience in general, but for us to realize that we have been way more high strung than we've ever needed to be. Like, the world doesn't fall apart if the meeting starts 5 minutes late. Like, just the sort of draconian way that we've often existed in this post-industrial age. Give people benefit of the doubt and have patience with one another.
Absolutely. So, Kevin, it's been wonderful talking to you. And I'd like to take a minute here to just sit quietly and reflect on how this coronavirus situation is affecting our neighbors down the street and all over the world, and pay particular attention to the needs that Kevin mentioned here and the work that he's doing. Togethering, because we will get through this better when we get through it together. Kevin, thank you, and stay safe and healthy.